Welcome to Career Cravings with your hosts, Dev Ramcharan and Megan Reed. If you crave a better and more satisfying career, this show is for you. We're broadcasting live on Bold Radio Station every week. Now, here are your hosts, Dev and Megan.
Good evening and welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Great. And to get us started, Terry, we're just going to ask you to spend a few minutes telling us about your career and some of the highlights along the way.
Sure. So I've worked in healthcare and social services for probably the last 25-ish years. And I've worked predominantly with seniors in long-term care and then in seniors housing. And then I also worked as a project manager for Alberta. Started taking classes that were fun after I graduated from university and seeing what kind of interested me, and I found food. So I've sort of just evolved from there in terms of food. I went from cake decorating and to developing my own recipes and then entering them in contests. And then I started a food blog almost a year ago. I was finding that you really needed to have a food blog to be taken as a legitimate food writer. Everybody that is, but my food tastes are very eclectic. And I also tend to ramble on a lot about food. If you get me in a conversation, you'll definitely want to run away. So that's why I decided to call it Food Meanderings. And I do try to tie it to my everyday life. There are contests that I enter as well, so I'll blog about those recipes when I've created a new contest entry. And if I win a contest, I want to write about it.
Lovely. So this show is one, Terry, where we talk to people like you who have really, in effect, found ways to enrich their career experience, either through diversifying or sometimes, in some instances, through specializing and further refining what they actually do.
I just, figuring things out as I went along, because what I came to learn was that you can love your work and still not love working all the time. I really guess you have to keep growing. Human beings need to grow, and that the work aspect is a part of us that needs the balance too. If you're doing something for a living as well, it's different than if you're doing it for a hobby or a sideline. I'm not somebody who's a big risk taker, so I also recently took a risk. I'll share with you, and I moved my website to a self-hosted website. Monetize the blog, which is something that I wasn't allowed to do before when I was on WordPress.com because, it was a free service and they have advertising on there. So you can't be putting advertising on your blog. So it's pretty exciting.
Intrigued to hear.
For in healthcare, it's very similar because, at Alberta Health Services, I was separated in a sense from the trenches and prime back end, make sure that the right people were going into the right long-term care and supportive living spaces. So it's really, it's about working with people and facilitating people. I think it's very similar, but you do see a difference when you're working in primary care, because primary care is where it all begins. When I was working in senior services, it's kind of like it's the end. So, but it's still about people and working with people, because you're working with families. When you're working, when I was working in Alberta Health Services, I was working a lot with families. I was still working with nurses. I'm still working with nurses, and I'm still working with doctors who are working with families. And I'm trying to, I guess, just, make everyone happy, make sure everything's going smoothly, or keep everyone happy, I should say.
Hi, Terry, it's Laura, and
Hi.
I think it's just so interesting how you have two careers going on, basically, your main career, and like a role model, a lot of people in that regard. But I think it's interesting how in your main career in the social services, you took the turn from working with seniors for...
The goal is to get everybody attached because, I mean, then you have the continuity of care, and evidence has shown it's better care. There's better outcomes if you have that continuity of care. Also, it's like acute care visits. Where I work, we have after hour support, things like that. You're just seeing a growth in that preventative type of care, and primary care is playing a major role in that.
Right. So, and I think it was my lack of understanding the term primary care, but what really stood out to me is that multidisciplinary practice, which I think sounds like it's changed in the last decade, where healthcare used to be very siloed, and now they're bringing together the strengths and expertise of multiple disciplines, which ultimately helps be more proactive in this.
Preventing, it's changing. We're going to see more of this. When you think about networks in primary care, really, Alberta is one of the only provinces that has them at this point. So I do see a lot more happening at the primary care level. I see a lot more coordination at the primary care level. I see a lot more being downloaded to primary care, but I think it's important that, I guess, the funding catches up. That's something that really needs to be looked at, because if family doctors and family clinics are going to be expected to do more, which makes sense, right? Because it's right at the hub, and you're really it's about prevention. So I guess the resources that are given to primary care really need to match the work that's being given to primary care. And I think if I was advising somebody about healthcare, it's a wonderful area to get into, because you really can make a difference. And there's so many jobs that I didn't even know my job existed. Like, it's going and meeting family physicians and doing quality improvement projects in their clinics, working to optimize their EMRs, and working with multidisciplinary teams. I would, like, this wasn't something that I looked at when it was in high school. It was like, do you want to be a nurse or a teacher? So I think there's so many more careers out there in healthcare that you just have to really explore it. I would suggest that if you're interested in healthcare, just talk to anyone. When I was looking at going into senior services, I did a lot of information interviews because it was really helpful. I went and met with directors at nursing homes. I met with social workers. I just learned as much as I possibly could about the field and any jobs that were associated with it. Easier now, we have the internet.
That's a wonderful thing to hear, because, I mean, it's something that Laura and the people that work with her, and that I advise people that we work with when we talk to them about their careers. Informational interviews are a wonderful way to learn about an organization or about a role or about an industry or something innovative that's occurring, whatever the case may be. So it's great that you did that. I'm really curious about something, Terry, and that is what we often find, even though we think all of us that the side areas or the areas of enrichment that we take on, like for you, blogging about food, it might be a radical departure from what we are already engaged in. But have you ever reflected on the similarities or the DNA in both food blogging and healthcare work that you do, that shows some kind of connection between the two? Anything that connects the two together, which would explain to some degree your interest in both?
Oh, definitely. I think I love projects, and I love big long-term projects. And so that's what attracted me to the last jobs that I've had. And that also attracted me to cake decorating because big projects used to be scary to me. But then I learned a really neat trick, a really simple, neat trick, and that was break it down into little steps. And so that's what I started doing, and I really enjoyed that. When I was doing a very elaborate cake, I broke it down into little steps. I'm not a winger. I'm a person who needs lots of time, lots of planning. So project management is great in that sense because I can do a little bit at a time, and that's what I do on my blog, and that's what I do in my job, and that's what I've done in other jobs. That's what I did when I decorated cakes. That's what I did when I planned out recipes, developed recipes, and then actually tested recipes. I take as much time as I need, and it was the same thing when I was in university. When I wrote papers, I would start my paper the week after it was assigned. People thought I was insane, but I knew that I needed a lot of time to complete it. I could work on it in little stages. I'm not going to get extended bursts of creativity. I get little bursts of creativity, and I want to maximize those. So I definitely do see the similarities in all of those sorts of project-y kind of things that I do as a hobby and for my work.
No, there's one more thing that you might not have realized. Maybe you did, but you just haven't put it into words yet. Both involve community and close engagement with and for the benefit of other people.
That's a very good point. Yes, I hadn't actually thought about it. The food blogging community is incredible. When you think about food blogging, you think about how competitive it is. And it can be very intimidating even going into it because really you're a dime a dozen. But if you looked at it that way, if you looked at anything that way, you'd never do anything. You'd be paralyzed. It's like music. I think that there's room for lots of different kinds of music and lots of different musicians. It's the same with food blogging. There's room for all of us. And I think the food blogging community has really evolved that way. I'm a member of Food Bloggers of Canada, and it's a really great supportive community. I'm also a member of Food Bloggers Central. There's people constantly going on there and supporting each other, giving each other advice. I actually have a really good friend that I worked with in my job in primary health care who is a travel blogger. So when I decided to start my blog, I went to her, of course, and she has been just amazing, the most amazing support. Like she has, I don't know what I would have done without her. Like there's so many things you need to learn about search engine optimization and social media, and it's very, very challenging and technical, and she has just been a godsend to me. I hope that everybody can have somebody like her. And so that's what I plan to do. I plan to pay it forward because I think that's so important.
Lovely.
Absolutely. Beautifully put, Terry. And I really liked your point about how we would all be paralyzed by pessimism if we listened to the voices around us, the voices of other people, the media, etc., who talk about how competitive things are. And blogging, there's a lot of bloggers out there. There are a lot of authors out there. I would have never penned my novel if I had listened to what was around me, because to get a novel out there is just near impossible. And same thing when I applied to my master's degree in counseling psychology, I heard that hundreds of people apply and there's limited positions. It's so tough to get into. And I think people sometimes thrive a little too much on the negative side of things, and that can really stall people if we let it. So I really think that point is warranted for our listeners. So thank you for that, Terry.
Yeah, I agree. I think, look at Starbucks. The coffee market was saturated. What if they decided to give up and, the coffee market's too saturated?
Yeah, exactly.
You can't let those things cloud your passion and ambition. You can't compare yourself to other people because it's a total dead end. You really, if I would have said, oh, well, I'm a dime a dozen as a food blogger, why bother? Well, why bother doing anything? Just, if you want to do something, just go for it.
Exactly, and you've really exemplified that. So knowing what you know today, what would you tell your 18-year-old self about career if you could go back in time and talk to her, Terry?
Oh, my 18-year-old self. She couldn't cook. I actually am writing a blog post about that this week. I burnt pizza, like those little McCain frozen pizzas. I couldn't cook.
That's hilarious. And if you've ever tasted Terry's food, you'd know how unbelievable it is to hear that.
To my 18-year-old self, I was so intimidated by trying anything. I didn't want to look stupid. I would say, try something that interests you. Just give it a go. You have nothing to lose. Enjoy it. If you don't like it, you can move on. At least you'll find out what you don't like, and you can work from there, because that's what I did. I took quilting. I hate sewing. It was awful, but I didn't know that before until I took it. I didn't even want to finish my quilt. I just felt obligated to. But, like I said, you can be paralyzed by indecision, and it's just all about momentum. Had I not took those courses, I wouldn't have discovered cake decorating. Had I not done that, I wouldn't have started working on the inside of the cake, and then started entering competitions, and then, done this food blog. And I'm really fulfilled by it, even if I don't end up making money down the road. Like, it doesn't really matter, because it's not my bread and butter, right? I wanted to see if it would take me anywhere, and maybe it'll lead me to what I really meant to do. Who knows? I'm enjoying it, and that's the important thing. And my friend Sue, who's my inspiring blogger friend who has helped me so much, she always said, when you no longer like it, then stop. As long as you're liking it, keep going. And I think that's right. Just enjoy it.
Great. And I think we can't... Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say one other thing. There's no failure. Failing is not trying. And I would have told my 18-year-old self to just get off her, scared little butt and get going and try something.
You have such a great sense of humor, and I think we can't emphasize enough. You need to get yourself out there and try different things. And some people who come to us for career counseling, they're confused about what to do because they really don't have anything that they love to do. But in a lot of cases, it's because they really haven't diversified and tried different things, different activities, hobbies, different courses, etc. And the more we can try, the better. And starting at a young age, I think the more we can expose children to and adolescents to, the more likely they are to find their passions. So great input there, Terry. And back to your culinary career, what are you most proud of so far about what you've accomplished in the culinary arena?
I think probably that I'm proud of the competitions I've won for recipes. But I'm really proud that I just jumped in and started this blog. It was a world that I knew nothing of, and it was scary. Like, I didn't know what a plugin or a widget or SEO was. I didn't even know when I actually started on my WordPress.com site, I didn't even know if I was in the back end or front end. I had no idea. And it took me like a good week to figure that out, which is pretty pathetic. But I kept going. I asked some friends for help, and I muddled through it. And now I've built not one but 2 websites. I've learned the ins and outs of social media. I'm not a pro, but I know quite a bit of, I know a lot more than I did when I started, that's for sure. I improved my food photography because it was pretty bad at the beginning. I still have a long way to go, but that's the fun thing about blogging, is that it's like photography. I did that for a while too. It's a fun hobby because the learning never ends, and you need to keep challenging yourself. It's nice right now because I don't have to rely on my 11-year-old when it comes to my computer anymore like I used to. He actually asks me questions. So I'm pretty proud about that.
Amazing. So, Terry, it's been very lovely listening as you've sort of gotten more comfortable with the process that we go through as we go through this interviewing with our guests. When you reflect on healthcare, it's going through such incredible transformational change. Alberta Health Services had a massive meltdown not too long ago, where the entire board of directors walked, and there was an incredible crisis in healthcare. So when you look at what was happening in healthcare, and then you reflect on the future of healthcare in the province, what sorts of things give you a sense of hope and make you feel, yes, there's something to look forward to as things progress?
Oh, what gives me hope? I think the emphasis on primary care does give me a lot of hope. And what would give me more hope is if it wasn't so politically driven. I mean, I did find that very frustrating working at the government level because it was very politically driven. And I think that if it wasn't, I'm not going to say run by politicians because it's not exactly run by politicians, but political winds shift and so do priorities. And I don't think the priorities should change. The priorities are what they are. We need to give the right care and by the right provider in the right place at the right time, right? So I think I do see that shift, and that does give me hope. That does inspire me, and I also see that I see a lot of, I guess, old school physicians who are embracing new concepts, and I find that very inspiring. And when I talk about new concepts, I talk about concepts like quality improvement and how it applies to them and their practice. It's not just some amorphous term, but drilling it right down to screening their patients and really doing that in an organized way. I think it's also about knowing who your patients are and understanding the relationship between you and your patient. It's an agreement that I'm your patient and you're my doctor. And I think that the government is really pushing this, and physicians are really understanding the importance of it, and hopefully patients will understand the importance of it, because that's who we really need to educate right now. So I do feel inspired when I see those sorts of things happening, when I see a push towards the health home and building a support network around the health home.
For us that have had the privilege and the honor to work in healthcare, and that's what I would say in the stints that I've had working in healthcare, we have a basic understanding of the motivations that underlie why people, in spite of all the frustrations, actually work in healthcare. There's the political frustrations. There's the continual sort of anxiety around budget time, and especially at the renewal of agreements and contracts as to whether or not funding is actually going to be forthcoming from funding agencies or government or whatever the case may be. And yet, in spite of that, and in spite of the complexity of this multi-tentacled beast we call healthcare, people still give everything they've got. Can you, as a person in the system, tell me a little bit about what is it that really, in the end, in spite of all of that complexity, keeps you fully engaged in what you do and loving it?
I feel like I'm making a difference. I think that's the best way I can put it. I'm not going to a job where I am just, I don't know, turning out widgets or doing, like, I actually feel that what I'm doing in the background is making a difference. I am helping doctors coordinate their screening. I'm helping, I'm helping clinics run more effectively and efficiently. It's not just me helping. I'm with like an amazing team of people helping, but it's helping, right? And we all need health care, or we all will at one point. And I just feel that I'm lucky to be able to contribute to that. I don't know how I'd feel about a job where I wasn't able to do that. I live with the uncertainty. I don't think there's any career anymore that doesn't have uncertainty. I think about, my parents, and they had a job and they were guaranteed that job was going to be forever, and then they get their defined pension plan. And I mean, I left a defined pension plan to go to an undefined pension plan because it was about quality of life for me and doing the job that I wanted to do. So I think, I having a job that doesn't make me stressed also allows me to be a better parent and have a better family life and just have balance all around.
Well said, Terry. I think that your values are shining through. Your value of making a difference in human beings' lives, your value of having a balanced life and being the best mother you can be, the best worker you can be, the best blogger you can be, all with within the limits and not overstressing yourself, which I wonder about the 4 a.m. wake ups.
I try to go to bed early.
Okay, good. So moving the clock forward and thinking of the future, what would you like people to say about you the day that you retire from your primary career, or the day that you retire from your sideline career of the blogging and the recipe contests?
I think, when I retire from my day job, from my healthcare career, I would really like people to say, oh, she's going to be so busy, she won't miss working for a minute. And I want it to be true. Okay.
And what is it about being busy why do you want that to be true? To be busy even after you quote unquote retire?
Because I want to be, and it's not so much busyness, because I think busyness can be a disease too in our society these days, and I've fallen victim to it as well. What I want is to be doing meaningful work, and that meaningful work may or may not be paid, but I want to be fulfilled. I think we all need to do something. We all need to be doing meaningful work. And after you retire, it can be quite a shock. So if you're not already involved in activities and have other interests, it can be very disconcerting for some people. I've known people who have retired and they think like, okay, I'm retired now. I can just go and go to pick a hobby or an interest now. I have time. And it's like they're going to their pantry to get a box of cereal. It's not like that. You have to have lifelong interests and passions and be engaged in them, and you have to make them a priority, or you're going to retire and you're not going to know what to do because you haven't nurtured any of that. That's why it's so important. And I've been trying to focus a lot on that in the last bunch of years. I mean, our time is really limited. We have so many obligations with family. You have to exercise. You have to take your kids to activities. Like there's a lot going on, but I can't tell people how important it is to make nurturing yourself and your interests and your passions a priority in your life, because there's going to come a day when you do retire, you don't have your job anymore, and you really have to ask yourself, well, what am I going to do? That's why it was so hard for some people to retire, especially, 30, 50 years ago when people didn't really do this. They didn't really nurture their hobbies and have a lot of things going on the side. The guys who played golf seem to be the best off because at least they could go play golf. But, you may not have you may not be in the best health. You don't know what's going to happen. So I think just having a lot of different passions and interests on the go is really important.
I couldn't agree more, and I really liked how you said busyness is a problem in society or almost a disease in some ways, but I also think, and you alluded to this too, we can be busy if we're doing things that we're passionate about and we're really busy, that's okay, right? Because we're fulfilling our interests and stuff. And people always think of me as really busy, but some of that busyness is playing squash, which is physical and I love it, and writing my book and running my businesses and being with my kids and doing fun things with them. And I'm really busy, but I thrive with that. And I think that we all need to have passions and interests to pursue. And I think that, like you said, the days of retiring and going from all out full-time work to the 3 Gs, golf, gardening, and grandkids, is not fulfilling enough for most of us. We need to have some other sources of giving back in some way, leaving a legacy, challenging our minds, etc. And golf can only go so far. Spoken from someone who loves golf. So what 3 things, Terry, do you want to accomplish between today and a day in the future when maybe you don't have to have a day job anymore? Maybe you don't need to work for money anymore. What 3 things do you really want to accomplish?
I think I am going to try and monetize my blog because I would like to do part-time income. That means that I could travel. Like, traveling is my goal. I didn't get to do it when I was younger, so being able to monetize the blog would potentially give me an opportunity to make some income and then do that part-time. And I don't know if it'll be enough or not, but I want to try it. So I have to increase the traffic on my website, and that takes a long time. It's a lot of work. It's kind of painfully slow sometimes. I started off with no visitors a day, and then for about 6 months, maybe 30 people. Some days I'd have none. Now, maybe, 70 to 100, 300 on a good day, but it's very slow going. So I think it's going to be better now that I have my own website and I'm self-hosted, because Google will be able to find me easier. That's part of it. People have to find you, right? So once I do that, I increase that a bit, I can try and monetize it, because you need decent traffic to be able to do that. I think that, advertisers really aren't going to look at you unless they have an audience to advertise to. So those are 2 of the goals. I think the third one, I'd still like to be able to write for a publication and get published and get paid for it. And just generally, I want to see where I can go with this hobby and see if I can make a sideline career of it and see where else it'll take me. I didn't know I'd end up here when I started cake decorating, so it's just kind of fun to see where you end up.
It's been a real pleasure speaking with you this evening or this afternoon, Terry. I've got one last final question for you, and then we'll transition to our next segment. You're at your retirement day party. There are a number of people that are there, and they're getting up and they're talking about Terry Gilson. What would you want to hear them say that would resonate deeply with you and give you the sense, you know what, I achieved what I wanted to? What do you want to hear them say on that day?
Oh, that's a tough question. I guess I'd want them to say that I was passionate about what I did, and that I really made a difference, and that I was really able to meet my goals, because we do set goals every year at my job, and it's important to me to meet those goals, because I'm very goal oriented. I set goals for myself on a personal level as well, with my food blog and with other aspects of my life. And I think that meeting those goals would mean that I accomplished something, and that, people enjoyed working with me. I think, people can say that, but you know when they mean it. So.
Terry, it's been an absolute delight speaking with you this evening, and thank you so much for being on the show. We're going to now move to our second segment after the break, and in that second segment, Laura and I will reflect on the guests that we've just spoken to and some of the themes that really stood out for us and that might help you with your career cravings as listeners to this broadcast. So, Laura, this was an interesting guest, and a guest with a very rich background experience. The wonderful theme of connection to all of our other guests is that moment, that feeling at some point in time where there wasn't enough in the way of fulfillment and pleasure that might have been provided by the one sphere of work. Sort of Peggy Lee's old song, "Is That All There Is?" And though that wasn't the case with Terry, because of what an incredibly rich and multifaceted career she was engaged in healthcare. But the food blogging aspect I found absolutely intriguing. It seemed like the two of them were as unrelated as you could get until you started to reflect on the complexities in both. The fact that you're dealing with ingredients which don't really mean much in and of themselves, until you begin to broker collaborations and mixtures and so on, both in the healthcare system as well as in what she is actually doing in her blog. But in addition to that, there's a social component. There's a real warm need for deep personal engagement, both on the career side and by way of the blog that she does. There were a couple of almost aphoristic sayings that came out of her that were classic, but at the same time very much important things for us to hear. She said, "There's no failure. Failure is not trying." Yoda couldn't have said it better, that great philosopher of Star Wars fame. But it was a
That's funny. I love that.
What did you get in talking with her?
I'm still laughing at the Yoda analogy there. So I got a lot from talking with Terry. I think one of the major themes that comes out is her lifelong learning. So her passion to continually learn and develop herself and try new things. And I think she's someone who's very focused on challenging herself and obviously setting goals, whether the goals are in her mainstream career, for which she's also passionate about, or whether they're in her sideline career, in her life. I think that she's very goal-driven, and I really liked how she said it's so important to break projects into little steps. Like even with career planning, we always encourage our clients to make a plan piece by piece. Don't think that you have to decide on your whole career direction at age 16, 17, but we like our clients to say, what can you decide in the near future? What are the next steps you need to take to become closer to figuring out that path? So that's really important. I also really liked how Terry talked about busyness in society and how we really need to be careful of not just, I guess, treading our wheels or just going through the motions. We need to be really, really focused on finding hobbies and passions that we love, so that by the time we retire, we have lots of different interests and things to fulfill us. So essentially, I'm going to pass it over to Dev to add any final thoughts here. And I really appreciate so much hearing from Terry. It was really inspirational for me.
So a couple of additional and I guess final thoughts would be, there's definitely a compassionate warmth that Terry has. The vocal intonation, the cadences in her expression as she went through speaking to us became quite varied and rich. As she talked about how important it was for her to work with people, to facilitate, to be able to go into practices on the front lines with primary care practitioners and be able to manage projects around service quality improvement, overall quality improvement. It was lovely to listen to those things. I detected in her a gift for analogy, and I'll tell you what I mean by that. What we find as we listen to people, and we've listened to many, many people through this broadcast over the last 2 years, is their career satisfaction is not necessarily tied to what they do. Their career satisfaction is tied to a way of thinking about what they do. And that gift for analogy that she has, where one project may be utterly different to another, but she finds the analogies and is able to break things down small and then be able, within the framework of the analogies that she sees, to manage to completion. She's very goal-oriented, process-minded, planning-oriented, which means that the process of delivery is going to have, insofar as anything in healthcare is able to have this, stability and a degree of reliability and progression through to completion. It's the same thing when you're decorating a cake, because if you're haphazard and you don't know what you're doing and you don't think it through, well, your cake could look like something that actually grows inside of somebody's gut as opposed to something that they put into their gut. I know that's an ugly analogy, and I know Laura likes that. But
that's very ugly, Deb. But I think another point that I forgot to mention, but I think is important, is that Terry alluded to healthcare being a wonderful area to focus on, and she's had a really fulfilling career helping seniors and now in primary care and being at the project level and making a big difference. And she said how there's so many jobs that we don't even know exist, and she didn't even know the job she's doing now existed when she planned her career earlier on. And I think that's true in many fields and industries, and it's about finding a path or a direction rather than an end occupation, because careers are changing every day. There's more new careers every day in the world, and it's really dangerous to get caught up in just one occupational title versus an overall direction that's values based. And in Terry's case, she works to make a difference in people's lives, and she has a creative flavor to her, and she gets creativity in bursts, and she applies the creativity to her main job, to her sideline job. And I think, again, the importance of finding a career that fits your values and your passions is really important.
There's something that sticks out to me. If I were to sum it up in what's her secret sauce, the McDonald's secret sauce, it's a gift for decomposition and recomposition. That seems to be something that's quite prevalent in the work that she does in the healthcare side, and also as far as the cake decoration is concerned. If you could summarize in 2 or 3 words, what makes her tick? What would that be for you, Laura?
Oh, wow. Okay. What makes Terry tick? Making a difference, doing so in a creative or out-of-the-box thinking kind of way, and always pushing forward, learning, constant learning would be the third.
Yes, she's no longer afraid of looking stupid. She just takes it on and moves it forward.
Absolutely.
So this has been a joy for us, And we are especially joyful that you all around the world were willing to log in and to listen to this program, either live or after it turns into a podcast. And we would love to have you join us again next time. Now, next weekend, we may be doing, are we doing a show with a live guest, Laura, or are we doing a replay given the holiday season in Canada?
We are doing a replay because next Sunday is Easter Sunday. But we're really excited to hear if you have any questions or comments about tonight's episode. You can always reach us via our Canada Career Counseling website, Twitter, or Facebook page. We're always looking for new guests and show topics. So if there are careers out there that you've been craving more information about, please let us know. And with that, I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in tonight, and especially to Terry Gilson for being our guest. And I hope you have a very happy Monday tomorrow, and we'll see you next time.
The career discussion doesn't stop here. For more information about how to transform your career, visit CanadaCareerCounseling.com. And remember to tune in next Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Bold Radio Station for the next episode of Career Cravings.